get a mentor. Yeah. And I don't offer anything like that, so I'm not saying that because of that. But you will get further along if you have somebody to help you. Yep. But you have to give back to that person too. Yep. Don't use them. I see we've all seen a lot of that, over the years. Yeah. Be friends with that person. Yep. And learn from them. I think that's key, is having that mentor.
Welcome to the Burning the Ships podcast, and I'm your host, Jason Seward, and today I'm sitting down with Lisa Englehart. Lisa, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Jason?
I am fantastic. We were just talking offline, and I get the most excited when I sit down with folks that I've heard a lot about, but I don't know their story. So I'm actually going to hear your story and everything about you personally and in real estate and entrepreneurship and all that stuff in real time right now, and I get to react accordingly. So I'm excited about that. I also mentioned to you that, I think you met my business partner, Bill Phillips, at Dealmaker back in March. I wasn't able to attend that. But you and I have never physically met. And I started hearing your name as I was having other guests from, just around the Virginia market. And I think I mentioned to you 3 or 4 of them in a row when they were making a point or talking about a mentor or something like that, mention you. And I was like, gosh, I think the last one that mentioned you, as soon as I got done with the podcast, I sent you a Facebook message because I didn't have your number or anything, and asked you to come on, and you agreed, and here we are. So I'm very excited to get this going.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So like every episode, before we get it kicked off, I'm going to turn it over to JJ for JJ's Joke of the Week. Take it away, JJ.
Why did the student bring a ladder to school? Because it wanted to be in the high school.
All right, buddy. Thanks for another good joke. That's my little comedian in the making, by the way.
I love it.
Yep. So, Lisa, what we're going to do here, like I mentioned, I don't know your story. I know that you are a heavy hitter in real estate, have been for many years, and you have a lot of folks that I've connected with that have been impacted by you and your messaging and everything you've got going on. So I think the best thing to do is just turn it over to you, let you introduce who you are, what you have going on, and we'll go from there.
Well, I'm Lisa Englehart. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, in a small town in Henrico called Varina. A lot of people didn't know where that was. It was only 10 minutes from downtown Richmond. And when I was 18, I loved real estate. And so I took the classes at night. I worked during the day at a bank, and I took classes at night to get my real estate license. And it kind of took off from there. I always wanted to get into being a real estate investor, being a landlord, but I always thought you had to have your own money. And so I was flat. I never could. I had that mentality where I just couldn't do it. And so for me, I just worked a 9 to 5, had bought my own house, bought my own new car. So I was pretty strapped, with payments. Just didn't know any better. Didn't have a mentor. So fast forward on, I worked and put my first land deal together when I got my license, but it's still a few years after that before I really, took the plunge and got into real estate. But I put 2 farms together, and that was really my first development. I put 2 farms together, and I took it to a developer who created a 55 and over community with 165 lots. So I had a lot of involvement in that, in the entire rezoning process, but it wasn't my project. Yeah. It's kind of that situation where you're like, I wish it was mine, but, I'm having to work for somebody else. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I got my kickstart into land development and rezoning and going through the whole zoning processes.
So you were early 20s at this point, is that correct? Or
I was actually 30. I worked, gotcha. Yeah. I ended up going through a divorce, and then I met my husband now, and he's the one that really influenced me to get into real estate. Okay. And helped me get my stardom. So it was really him that got me where I wanted to be.
Can I go back before I lose this thought? You mentioned that you were 18 and really wanted to get into real estate? Where did that come from? Because I don't know many 18-year-olds that without some type of influence pushing them that have that natural instinct to get into real estate.
I wish I could say that someone pushed me, but I really pushed myself.
Okay.
I always had that drive. I always had I can do this, but I just didn't know how. I didn't know where I was going to get the money from. I just had the drive to be somebody that I really couldn't be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So you're getting a taste of it. It sounds like through land development and land deals, but being a part of it as a realtor. Is that right?
Yes.
Rather than owning it yourself. So where does it go from there?
Well, for me, I had to sort of find my way. I had to figure it out. I had to, figure out how I was going to get where I wanted to go, where I wanted to get. So I just learned by my mistakes. I went through the whole development process. I actually ran the development with I helped with the rezone, and I didn't particularly go to the county. They had, hired a professional to do that, but I worked on the back end because I wanted to learn, and I wanted to be that one someday that somebody would bring land to me so that I could do that development and I could be that builder that would buy those lots. So I fast forward, it took about 3 years to get that development going. These big developments take a long time. And I'm a very impatient person. I have the mentality where I want it right now. Right. Yep. So I had to figure that out. So I started selling real estate, and what ended up happening is the market crash. And it just like new construction was dead. And I had to figure out a way, how am I going to feed my family? How am I going to make a living? So out of the blue, I was sitting in a model home in that development, and a friend called me and said, hey, she worked for one of the large banks downtown Richmond. She said, hey, do you want to list our REO properties? And I didn't even know what REO meant at the time. And I was like, when she said list, I'm like, yes. And so I went on to become one of the top agents in Richmond selling REO properties. And I did that for a good 10 years because it was, my biggest year in REO was in 2015. You would think it would have been like 08, 09. No, it was further along. Mm-hmm. And so fast forward from there, in 2016, I'll never ever forget this year because I was so burned out. I was working 7 days a week, running ragged for all these banks under their thumb. I was selling listing and selling a lot of REO properties. And I kept seeing Jim Ingersoll's name come across my desk. I sure did. I kept seeing his name come across my desk. I'm like, who is this guy?
Right.
Because he was buying up all these deals, and I was sitting there going, if I had this deal, I couldn't buy my own, listings, but I'm like, if I had this deal, seeing these killer deals go across my desk, and Jim bought a lot of them. And so I went on Google and I researched his name, and it popped up. He was having this investor meetup. It wasn't called Deal Maker at the time. It was called Investor Bootcamp. And I immediately signed up for it. And that was life-changing for me, literally life-changing for me at that point.
Yeah, I don't know how, I've gotten pretty close to Jim now, but I don't know how many people that he has influenced that I've heard that same, a variation of that story where something he said, did, put together a meetup or something, he impacted people's lives that way, like life-changing. Mm-hmm. And I'm feeling that same influence from him now. We're getting ready to start a Deal Maker Hampton Roads in January. So, and that's all stemming from his influence. So, that's and for folks that don't know REO properties, because I do have a lot of listeners that aren't, they're learning real estate. So REO is basically a bank-owned or lender-owned property. So she was helping sell the foreclosures essentially. So,
yeah.
Yep. So you connected with Jim. And then what did that open your eyes to? And what shifted at that point? You said it was life-changing. So what did it change in your life?
It was extremely life-changing. I can't tell you. I was looking for something in my life to change because I was burned out, and, I wanted to be in real estate, and I wanted to figure out, how is he buying all these houses? So I went, and I was in awe the whole time. I met a few friends there that became lifetime friends for me. One of the things that really stood out is they kept emphasizing that you don't need your own money to own real estate. And that was very impactful for me. I ended up signing up for a mastermind that he had in Virginia Beach. I did that, and that was for like 3 or 4 days. So I met a lot more people during that time frame. He rented an Airbnb, a large house in the Virginia Beach area, and we all congregated there for, I think it was 3 or 4 days. And that was right after that. So right after that, his event in 2016. So I had already made up my mind. It was very clear for me that I did not want to run a brokerage anymore. So I went back to my office and I told all of my agents they had to hang their license at another firm. And I gave them until, I think it was November 1st or the end of November to do that. Looking back, I probably should have, sold my brokerage and sold that REO, because I had built up a good reputation with my asset managers who were managing the foreclosures and handing those out to their favorite agents to list for them. But I really took a plunge where I was that burnt out, and I had the HUD account, I had the VA account, and I gave it all back. I think it was like 20 when I set that deadline date, I handed back it was like 26, it was 20s, I can't remember today, but I handed over 20 listings back to them.
Wow.
And walked away and became a full-time real estate investor at that point.
You know what they call that? You burn the ships. So
Exactly.
that is fantastic.
Exactly.
So
I
did
burned
you
the ships.
I'm curious though. So you did all that. Had you done a full cycle deal on your own at that point? Or did you just say, I know I'm going to be able to figure this out. So I in order to do so, I've got to cut ties with everything else over here. How did that work?
I did. I had actually purchased a home in the museum district and pretty much kind of went out on my own with that and rehabbed an old house in the museum district. And I made some mistakes. I haven't ever had to take money to the table on a flip. But it was close. My first flip that I did, I ended up making like 5,000. But what I did do is I had 25,000 in tax credits. So I went through that process of, doing those the state tax credits. So I did have 25,000 in that. And then I netted like 5,000 after paying the commissions out. And one of the things that I did wrong was it was a 1918 house, and I didn't allow for some of the things that I should have allowed for on the rehab.
Right.
But luckily for me, I've never had to take money to the bank. To the closing. But after that, I was still a real estate broker actively selling during that time frame. Mm-hmm. When I netted the 5,000, I borrowed hard money from one of the hard money lenders here in Richmond that came across my desk a lot. I had built a relationship with him, and he had loaned me the money. He knew my background. My husband was Class A contractor, builder, and had been doing that for many, many years. So I had that mentor, helping me along the way. But I just started buying houses and flipping, and I was really enjoying that. And then I would sell my own. That's kind of what I had started doing, is selling my own to save on that listing side of the commission.
So you made on that one in the museum district, you made $5,000, but it didn't go as planned. So
right, you
got an education and made $5,000.
I did.
Right.
I
Yeah.
did.
So
it was a win.
my first, I had bird several properties, but my first house that I ever bought with the intent to flip, I'm going to buy it, fix it up, sell it in a few months. I lost $500. Everything went to crap, and I lost $500. That was the best $500 I ever spent by far, because so many, I'm not going to bore you with the story, but so many things now have become a part of our checklist, from that one deal, right? That I was just so eager to get things done, and I was ignoring things. And, but again, and I think that's a mindset and a perspective that a lot of people don't see until they reflect back on the losses, right? Like I didn't feel like I was paying $500 for an education. I lost money, right? I failed.
Oh yeah.
But now reflecting back, it was a life-changing deal for me because I learned so much. And sounds like, this probably was similar to you, except you made money. So, but
Yes, but I tell you, even today, I'm still adding things to checklist.
oh yeah,
And that's what I love about real estate is it's different every single day. And there are ups and downs with all of it.
that's exactly right. So now, like you're doing that, you're doing the brokerage, but then you decide to go all in on real estate investing. What year? What time frame are we in now? What year?
2016.
16. Okay. All right. And where does it go from there?
So I was just looking for deals. My biggest concern was finding the funding
Mm-hmm.
because I was a new investor. I was going to Dealmaker, but keep in mind we didn't have the monthly meetups for Dealmakers at that time. So, but what we did have is I had met some people down in Mississippi that held a lot of events in Mississippi. And they held a lot of cruises where they brought everybody together. So every time I went on one of these cruises, my husband and I went on one of these cruises, the whole network, the Dealmaker network was coming all back together.
Mm-hmm.
So I was constantly building these relationships. And that's really what it took. But I have to share this with you. I will never forget this. Probably my second Dealmaker, I was still having a little trouble. Always felt like I had to ask for money. Okay. And that was my biggest downfall because I felt like it was shameful for me to ask for money.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's how a new real estate investor's mindset is. I've got to ask for money and I feel like I'm this tall because I've got to ask for money. But I had a friend, Robin Dunn, that would always instill in me. She would say, Lisa, this is an opportunity. I met her on one of the cruises through a mutual friend. This is an opportunity, and you have to change your mindset on how you look at that. This is an opportunity for me, for somebody that loans money to my friends. This is an opportunity for me and for you. And it took me a while to really get that, but that's how I started. I had to start looking at it if I was going to be successful with this, because I needed their money. They needed me and my deal.
Yep.
And so it kind of took off from there. But here's the thing I was getting ready to tell you. I was at one of the Dealmakers back in, I don't know, it might have been the next year. And I'll never forget Rich Lennon saying, find the deal, the money will come. Mm-hmm. And that was the scariest thing for me because I had to go out here and find these off-market deals and get them under contract. And I didn't have $75,000 at the time just to whip out and pay in cash. But I was telling them that I was either going to pay cash, but I was likely going to be borrowing money from an IRA, right? And I wasn't going to make somebody think that I was doing something that I wasn't going to do, but I could potentially partner up with somebody that was bringing cash. So I wasn't giving them false information, but I was really telling them I'm likely going, and in the contract, I am likely going to bring in private money for this deal. So it kind of took off from there. Then I started having more relationships with people and beginning to borrow that money. And I was so excited because I was able to really start turning and burning deals at that point.
Yeah. Were you, when you realized that and you started cranking up deal flow, did you get to a point ever where you had more deals than you did have capital? Did you have to wholesale any or anything like that?
I never wholesaled any, and I only bought one wholesale deal.
Okay.
And it was a structural problem that
Wow.
other people were afraid of. And my husband and I weren't afraid of that.
So you were sourcing your own off-market deals.
Yes.
Okay. Let's get into that then. So what strategies were you using if you weren't, and the reason I'm curious here, because we bought a lot of property. 75% of it's been through wholesalers, right? And not so much now, but back in that, like 2017 to 21, it was almost all wholesalers. It was easy to make the numbers work. So we never put much marketing or dollars toward, and plus, well, I say we, my business partner and I, we always had full-time jobs. So we were focused on that. Real estate was a side hustle. So we didn't allocate much energy to sourcing deals other than wholesalers. So you, who are saying the exact opposite, I'm curious, what strategies did you use to source your deals?
I would drive for dollars myself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Just myself, me,
Yep.
myself, and I, honestly. And I would meet wholesalers at gyms, been up on stage with several of them, wonderful people. But I could not make those numbers work because I had made a shift. I did not want to rehab houses anymore because I didn't feel like I was good at it. I wasn't that good at it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like I did my numbers right. I always had low self-confidence on running those numbers.
Yeah.
And land intrigued me more. So I wanted to get back into land, finding land deals. That's what excited me, was land.
Gotcha. So, I want to stay here for one more second. So you were driving for dollars, and this is where I've mentored a few folks, and that's like all where I tell everybody to start. Like, that doesn't cost you anything but gas and time, right?
That's
and
right.
you get a piece of paper or notes in your phone or whatever. Write down addresses that look like they could be distressed or maybe nobody living there or whatever. Figure out how to research who owns it and figure out how to contact them. So did you have a system set up for that you were working, like making your list? And then were you using VAs in any way, or were you just...
No.
Okay.
It was just me. And let me tell you something. If I can do it, anybody can do it. It was me, myself, and I. And with my REO background with the foreclosures, I had been in a lot of distressed neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
I had been in areas where I would only go early in the morning. So I've been in some pretty rough areas. And so I had gone back to some of these neighborhoods to maybe potentially get some of these houses under contract on some neighborhoods that were regentrifying and turning around.
Right.
And so I worked in that Richmond market flipping houses.
Okay.
Petersburg. I would go down to different areas, Henrico. It just depended on, where I could find that deal. So I would take a different route all the time.
Yeah.
And I would just, try to work it out. I would pay for, the background. I don't want to say the name, I guess, on here, but I would pay for background searches on my own, and I would do those because I would get pretty much right to them, and I would make phone calls. But I was really better at sending letters because I had been in that REO market so long. And when I would have to go to the door for these people that were in distress and were being foreclosed on, most of the time they wouldn't answer the door. They didn't want to see you. They didn't want anything to do with you. And so I had a lot of compassion for the people that were struggling. And so the letters and leaving letters on the door was better for me. That's what I used to do with Cash for Keys and stuff like that. So I like to communicate with them a little bit different than calling them because their phone was ringing off the hook, because they were in default.
Yeah. I agree 100%. Your letters, were you personalizing them? Like, were you writing the letters and signing them yourself, or did you use a third party?
I did it first, but I did them myself, but I would do them in a Word document, but I would sign them all in blue ink.
Right.
And then I tried the yellow letters myself. I was on a low budget. I was trying to do this, but on my own, with trying to create my own deals. So I just did whatever I could.
Yeah.
I did whatever I could.
We only did one. No, we did two letter campaigns. But the one that got the best results was one specific pocket in Newport News that we already owned a couple townhomes in, and every townhome, it was hundreds of them in one little couple block section. They were identical, and they were mostly landlord owned, right? So the owner lived elsewhere. So the letter campaign I did, I think we mailed out 1,000 letters, and I personalized them so much, and I was very honest in my letter that I was trying to buy these houses as an investment to supplement my retirement for me and my family. And I even put a picture of me and my family at the bottom of the letter and all that.
Yeah.
Got a tremendous response. I think we bought, I know, 2 more houses out of that campaign, but I mean, it was just a simple effort. But hindsight, I wish we had done more of that. It would have been, would have gotten us straight to the seller more often than dealing with wholesalers. But I love that when I asked you that question, you went right to driving for dollars. It's the easiest, simplest way to
It
get
is.
involved. Even if you're having to wholesale them, because if you haven't made those capital connections yet, at least you're learning how to source deals. And if you can find deals, to your point, the money will find you eventually. So
It will. And it took me a little bit to believe that, but it was amazing. And that is true. So if I can repeat that
yeah,
for new investors, it really does work. Find the deal, the money will come.
gotcha. So you did that for some time, and then you said you were drawn back to the land. That's where your kind of heart was and your mind was. So where did that go? Did you continue doing the flips, and were you doing any buy holds or just flips?
Just flips.
Okay. So did you continue that as you transition more land focus?
So what I did is I turned more land focused because my husband's a builder, and it just hit me out of the blue one day. And I'm like, what am I doing? I've got this talented man that has taught me everything about new construction all these years. And I had been helping him with stuff, but he was doing a lot of custom work. And I'm like, I should be doing that. I want to take him out of that because he's burned out of that. So I want to take him out of that. And so I started, because I wasn't very good at pricing the flips and coming up with my budget properly, I said, I'm going to start looking for land. So I drove for dollars looking for land. And the GIS map is still my best friend.
Yep.
I go through that all the time. And I do, I always say to I get sick of my stomach thinking about doing a flip. But it's funny because I passed a not so bad manufactured home on the main road that is in distress, and that I would do things a little bit different now. I'm not opposed to checking that out, but I won't touch it. I'm not going to go in and do a rehab. I'll just flip it over to somebody else and make a little money on it. Yeah. So I'm not focused on doing that but if something's in my radar in my travels, I'm not opposed to doing that. But my main focus is I develop small land parcels and create communities, small communities. And that's what my niche is. That's what I love doing. Can you
walk me through an example? It can be just kind of like your average deal. You find it, you see an opportunity, you do the entitlements, rezoning, all of that. Kind of walk us through an example of how you would take down a property like this.
Okay. So for instance, I bought 9 lots and I needed the 10th one on the corner. And so I finally got that 10th one from a different owner. So I have these, actually 11. I've got 11 lots and a whole entire block that's 1 block off of the water.
Okay.
But it has all of that parcel has deeded access to 2 beaches.
Nice.
So I try to do something where somebody has an opportunity to be near the water and have access to the water when I can. So I converted these lots into 5 because I wanted to make them a little bit bigger.
Okay.
But keep in mind, everything that I do outside of the city, since I don't develop in the city anymore, is everything is on septic or public water, well, or septic. And down in the coastal areas, a lot of times the soils are so bad if they don't, there are instances where, they can't perk or they don't perk. But in today's world, you can pretty much put that septic system where you want it.
Yeah.
And so I go through all of that before I close, long story short, and then I start the subdivision process where we're subdividing the land.
Right.
And when I get to that status, I'm working with my private lenders on the underlying. So a lot of people don't realize that that's practically easy to do when you have connections. So I buy land with an underlying private lender, whether it's be an IRA, whether it be just an LLC they have or checking account, however they want to do it. And so I get that. I have to, depending on when I have to close it, if I have to close on it, I borrow the private money to close it from small dollar IRAs, pooling them together, however we work that. And then I am ready at that point to file for a building permit. So now I have a construction loan that I need funded, right? Mm-hmm. So now I've got an underline and now I've got a construction loan. Well, guess what? That construction loan is going to have to fall into second unless that underline's paid off.
Yeah.
as part of the construction loan. You know this from being a lender.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I work a lot of my deals. So I'll build and then sell the house. And when I go to pay that loan, my construction loan off, I'm paying the construction loan off that's in second, and I'm paying that small dollar underlying off that's in first. Now, sometimes my first lender will subordinate that and come into second. So it really it depends on how, we work that out between me, myself and my private lenders.
Okay. So you're taking, when you say land, most of them, you're looking at it through the lens of, I'm going to create an opportunity that I can build ground up and have a finished product to sell on the back end. That's what you're doing, right?
Yes.
But yeah, excuse me. A lot of land investors are by doing the same thing you're doing, getting it to a point where it's shovel ready, and then they're selling it off to the builder. But you're taking it all the way to the end, and I would imagine the margins are very good doing it this way.
They are.
Mm-hmm.
They are for me, and that's why I'm kind of a land hoarder. I can sell the lots. I get asked all the time about selling my lots. And then I think, well, why would I sell my lots? And then I've got to go find more land. And I enjoy building. I do enjoy the land development more, I have to say, because there's so many moving parts. I have more freedom with the land development than I do with building. But I don't want to give up that profit, because now I'm profiting on the development side and I'm profiting on the building side, and I'm creating a community. So that's what I like to do, is buy blocks of land and create a small community. And now with the ever-changing market that we're dealing with, I'm figuring out a way to owner finance these as well. So that's what I'm working on now. I have one left in one of my communities, in this community that I'm talking about. And so I am working out a way to where I can owner finance that too. And maybe my target market would be self-employed people. They have a down payment. They may not qualify for a loan, but they can prove they have the ability to pay. And so I'll create that note. I can always sell that note,
Yep.
And I'll have my underlying mortgage on it. So I'll still have that. I'll cash out my construction loan and my land loan, like I was just saying that I would do, like if I sold it. But I won't get all of my profit at one time, but my underlines will be paid off. I'll still pull a little cash out, and I'll collect a down payment from the end buyer. And then I'll have that mailbox money, because at my age now, I'm more interested in the mailbox money, the cash flow, versus that chunk money that I have to pay taxes on.
Right.
So I can't run this through my IRA. I'm too involved in it.
Right. From a tax strategy, that is a home run. So for sure. That's interesting. So outside of the dollars of it all, right? These are, you're making profits, you're setting it up, doing some seller finance and looking at all that. But the way you just described that, like my mind goes, taking all the money away from it, you're creating a community like that. And families are living now in this community, and now they have neighbors, and their kids have other kids to play with, all because you had a vision to create this. How much do you think about that, and how much pride do you take in that?
I take a lot of pride in that, because there's a little bit more to the story. I'm their neighbor.
Yeah. Okay. So you're living
I'm their neighbor
community. Okay.
And that's how I form those relationships with them. Even if they have an agent, I'm forming that relationship with them. I'm going to the final walkthrough because they are my neighbor.
Yeah.
And even like in New Kent, they're not my neighbor, but they are my neighbor, because I want them to be my neighbor, even though they're a couple counties away. So I'm building that relationship with them. I want them to come to me if there's a problem with the house. I want them to feel comfortable coming to me. And I want to build that relationship with them. So that's what I enjoy the most. My husband and I both do. We are their neighbors. And I even put that in the house. We're not just your builder building this house to sell to you. We are your neighbor.
I love it. All right. The first house that my wife and I lived in when we got married, was a old farmhouse here in Surrey County. And we eventually bought another house, ended up building another house. But I remember I seller financed that house to a younger couple with young kids. And I say younger, they were my age, and the kids were about my kids' age. But I remember riding by, they were still my neighbors, lived in we don't have neighbors out here in the country, but they were, I rode by their house a lot. But I remember riding by one weekend, and the husband, the dad, he was out there building with the kids a big tree house and a big pecan tree that was on, no, it was an oak tree that was on the property, and a giant tree house. And I just like, I got more satisfaction out of seeing that tree house going up with those kids than I did any part of the money side of it, right? I still kind of owned the house. Like they were, I seller financed it, so I was the bank at that point. But that, like, I made that correlation of, gosh, he's taken something that, was important to me, my first house with my wife, and now he's building a family there and doing something crazy with it. And that's why I asked that question, because I get so excited about that type of, outside of all the money and the strategy, there is relationships. There are people involved with all of these transactions. So,
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yep. So is that the land? Is that where you've been in it for a while? Is that where you're mostly focused now, land and ground up development?
Yes.
Okay.
Land and ground up development. I like to do what's by right. I had a bad experience back in 2008 with going through my own first development that my husband and I were doing. And when the market crashed, that was another market crash. And that, just like Henrico County, the plan of development application, I mean, this is in other counties too, but just specifically Henrico, I believe it's like 29 pages long for a plan of development.
Right.
So, and most of that has to be completed by your engineer. So cha-ching, cha-ching, you're writing a lot of checks, but I don't, because, I'm not saying I don't. I like to do things. I pick the zoning that I want, and I buy that land with the zoning already there with what I want to do with it. And I know how to subdivide it and get the number of lots that I want. And I take the easy route, and it works for me. It just works well for me.
Yeah. It's county to county, city to city, but that whole rezoning process, and you mentioned like doing a flip in the museum district. This house I'm sitting in right now, that's now my office, is in the historic district of the town of Smithfield. I bought this house. I got a great price on it. It was completely gutted when I bought it, but I had no idea the fight I was getting into with having to, match everything to its original state and all these things. And I kept having the job shut down on, but you're right. It when you get into land, it gets even more complicated trying to get rezoned and having to, more so, like, even if you have high confidence that you can achieve what you want, the time, like, you might show up to a board meeting for them to look at your case to get for rezoning, and they may not have a quorum, so they have to delay the meeting to the next quarter. And now this thing that you're trying to do is bringing no revenue in, so it's just costing you money and time. So I agree with you there. I don't want to touch anything that has to be rezoned or we have to fight with the county or anything like that. So
red tape. I stay away from as much red tape as I can, but I will tell you, I did a rezoning in the city of Richmond on a development that I did there. And that was the easiest development I've ever done. Yes.
Okay.
Believe it or not.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Good to know. Yeah. We, as lenders, we lend on a lot of land, but for the most part, if the loan and the value is contingent upon an approval of any sort, like the county having to approve something, or they have to get a special use permit or something like that, we won't touch it, because that could lock us up for quite a bit. But we do get some good deals like you're talking about where it's ready to go. They just got to go in there and implement a plan. I want to transition for a second into, and I apologize because I can't remember which guest brought you up when I said this, but they were talking about something, and I said, well, everything is figureoutable. And they said, that's a Lisa, I think it was Brandon Lindsay might have said.
Brandon.
Yeah. And he said, that's Lisa all day long. And I said, well, that is, have you read that book by Marie, I think it's Forleo yeah.
I didn't even know there was a book.
Yeah.
So no, I was talking about it years ago because I had to figure it out.
Yep.
you know, or I was going to be sitting on the porch watching everybody else. And I had been for years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just try to instill, whenever Jim would have me speak, I would just try to instill in people that everything's figureoutable. And it doesn't just apply to real estate.
It's
It's
like,
everything. How many times have you stressed out about something and then you figured it out? And then it was like, why did I waste all that time being stressed out when I figured it out? It might take a few days, but it worked.
yep. So I read her book. It's probably, I'd say 8 or 9 years ago now. And that's why I was still heavy involved with my career, and I was starting to ramp up in real estate on the side. And it was becoming a lot of weight, right? And I had one foot in each one, and I, just trying to figure a lot of things out. And I read that book. And when I say, you mentioned like life changing, that was life changing. Just that mindset alone was, I know I have the ability to think through every situation. So instead of stressing about everything, let me look at it through the lens of here's another opportunity for me to do what I know I can do, I'm capable of. And what it did for me is now I almost I almost am happier when I have problems to solve. Like if I don't have problems, and my wife jokes all the time, so does my business partner, if things get too smooth, I'm creating chaos just so I have something to figure out, And so if you care to like go into your perspectives around that and maybe where that mindset came from for you, because I mean, go back to 18 years old, you're thinking about real estate. Did you have that mentality then? I can figure out how to do anything, or is that something that evolved?
I could figure out anything. I just didn't have the means. I didn't have the money. And so it always shot me down. So I never could think past that because I didn't have the money until I went to Jim's in 2016. That was a long stretch.
Yeah.
And I look back and I'm like, okay, gosh, if I was 18 again, and somebody took me or mentored me and took me to Jim's event, look at where I would be today. It doesn't matter me looking back now, but I think about the young people who have a passion for real estate and they don't know how to get started, and go to a deal maker, have a mentor. That is what's important. And they will be retired probably by the time they're 30 or 40 years old if they want to retire.
Yeah, and I'm gonna come back to that word, retired word. So we'll come back there. I do want to talk a little bit about what you were just talking about, the power of mentorship, community, networking, stuff like that. And I'll preface it with like my own journey. As I mentioned, I worked in the insurance field for my entire career. Basically, I was 23 when I started with Farm Bureau, and I was there until I was 40 years old. So, and then left to go into real estate. But that whole time there, as I started dabbling in real estate and then started ramping it up where it was pretty much a second full-time job, nobody knew what I was doing in real estate. I kept it as quiet intentionally, but I kept it very quiet to myself. I'll figure everything out on my own. I don't need a mentor. I don't need to go to networking events, mainly because I had this fear that it would get out to the company I was working for and they might think it was compromising the job I was doing for them, which it wasn't, but that's what I was worried about. So I'll say all that to say, when I left that job, right before leaving, was the first time in my life that I started leaning into networking and actually connecting. And this is just a few years ago. And I started paying to be in rooms and groups, big national groups and local events, and started speaking at them and stuff like that. And Lisa, when I say that everything in my entrepreneurial and personal, to some degree, life has changed since then, I am not exaggerating that. Like the leaning into mentors, providing value, but also extracting value from rooms I'm in and learning from those that are 5, 10, 20 years ahead of me has blown everything up in a good way in my life. So what are your thoughts on that? Obviously, you've kind of shared some of them, but.
I've always been an introvert. I would have never like walked up to you at an event and introduced myself before. I was just always like that. So it took me a good 3 or 4 times going to deal makers to really, and I've been to every single one of them since, but it's taken me a long time to do that. Down in Mississippi, they would this guy that would hold an event. I went like 4 times a year there. He would go around the room and get everybody to say their name. I hated that because I didn't want any of the attention on me. I didn't want to stand up in front of people. But I learned quickly that the networking is the power.
Yep.
That's where I have built all of my relationships. I have networked with people I did not know were private lenders. And they came to me later and said, "Hey, Lisa, do you need any money?" And I was like flipped out, right? I was like, "Who? You don't have, they know your reputation. Everybody talks. You have to have a good reputation. You have to have your stuff together. And you have to have a mentor. If I had had that mentor, somebody to lean on, I would be a lot further along than I am now. I am self-taught with land development. I have learned by all of my mistakes. I have fallen flat on my face. I can't tell you how many times.
Right.
But I don't stop, and I won't stop. I just pick myself up, and you know what? It was an education. I have gotten, I feel like, a triple master degree on real estate because of the mistakes that I've made. So I love it because every day is a challenge, and that's what I like.
So you're speaking my language now. I was recording a solo podcast episode last week, and I'm in the middle of recording, and I hear the door to this house open. I'm like, who's barging in here? It was my mom, and my birthday was last week, and she brought over, I don't know if you can see this mug.
Yeah,
grit. Yep. So what you just talked about is that. And here's what it says on the mug. It says grit, the drive, stamina, and fortitude to push through any challenge or obstacle until success is achieved. And what you just said is that in a nutshell. And I love it. You clearly have a ton of grit. And I think, like, I've talked to so many people through this podcast and through networking and stuff like that. Grit, like, it's hard to exactly define that, but I think that does a good job. But that is one common denominator I see in people that are just keep moving the needle and keep figuring things out and stuff like that. And I love being aligned with those people. I just love it, And
Me
you
too.
talking about networking. So I'm in a national mastermind called Legacy Family with Tim Bratz. He's the leader. He's a big apartment commercial real estate guy. But I remember being at one event. There's probably 250 people in the room, and he's on stage, and he says, "Okay, raise your hand if you have capital but don't have deals." And a third of the room raised their hand. And he said, "Okay, raise your hand if you have a lot of deals, but you don't have the capital to fund it." Another third of the room raised their hand. "Raise your hand if you don't have either." Another third of the room raised their hand. He said, "Okay, so now we've got 100 people here, 100 people here, and 100 people here. Now we're going to have 2 hours of just talking. Go connect with the people that raised their hand when you didn't, and you're going to make deals together." And that sounds so simple, but it's so true. There's always somebody that can benefit from some value that you can provide, that can bring value to you that they can provide. Just go find those people and just keep searching for them, and you'll find them. So
That's right. You have to show up and go to events.
Yeah.
That's the key. You have to show up, go to and most everything is free if it's local. If it's local meetups, it's free. Or go invite somebody to have lunch with you.
Yeah, that's the thing. And we have found, so we try our best to attend as many events as we can. Again, I'm an hour and a half from Richmond, and I've got 2 young kids. So it's hard for me to get out to, like, there's an event every night, but we try to hit a couple a month. And every single event I attend, I come away with new friends, new people that I'm going to stay in contact with. And whether or not we do business, it's another person in my Rolodex that I can connect to another person if they need that person, and that's what's motivated us to kick off Dealmaker in Hampton Roads. I'm so grateful that Jim has allowed us to do that, but that's going to allow us to now facilitate that bubble, and I'm excited about it. So
I'll be able to come to that. I'm pretty sure that it's probably maybe an hour or so for me, depending on where, but
it'll be
I'll definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm an hour from Newport News, so I'll definitely be attending that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're still trying to nail down. We've got the venue. They're working with us on the date, and because it's going to be a reoccurring, like, third Thursday every month or something like that. So we just got to nail that down with them, but we're excited about it. But Lisa, you are everything that everybody told me you were, and I'm so thankful that you took the time to come on here and share your knowledge. I told you I want to come back to one word. You said retired. What does that look like for you?
I don't have any plans to retire.
Okay. Yeah.
I
I knew that would be your answer, by the way.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll
So
probably
why?
be 85 years old if I make it that long, still putting deals together. Seriously, I love it that much. It's not a job to me.
Yep. So I talk about a lot on here with a lot of my guests about, are you get more excited about the destination or the journey? And I've talked to so many people about it. I've kind of come to the conclusion that the destination is the journey if you are passionate enough about the journey. And like this journey I'm on, I don't ever want it to end. I love doing deals, and I can do deals and make loans and talk to people while I'm hanging out with my kids, and they see it and they love it. I mean, it doesn't have to, this whole like work-life balance thing, they can intermingle. It's okay. As long as you're doing it in a healthy way. And I'm with you. I'm 44 years old. I'll be doing this literally as long as my brain and my energy allows me to do it. And I'm glad to hear you answer it that way.
Oh yeah, same.
Because that means you love it. You absolutely love it.
That's right.
So yeah, I love that. So Lisa, is there anything else, any other nuggets you want to leave the audience with before we get out of here?
Get a mentor.
Yeah.
And I don't offer anything like that, so I'm not saying that because of that. But you will get further along if you have somebody to help you.
Yep.
But you have to give back to that person too.
Yep.
Don't use them. I see we've all seen a lot of that, over the years.
Yeah.
Be friends with that person.
Yep.
And learn from them. I think that's key, is having that mentor.
And if you get the right mentor or mentors with the abundance mindset, and the reason I say that, my biggest mentor has been Kelly Garrett. She's the CEO of Rehab Wallet out of Charleston, South Carolina. We built our business as an exact replica of her business, her company. She's 10 times larger than we'll ever be. But I remember asking her, like we went to her and asked her, if she would mentor us or be a consultant. We didn't have anything. We hadn't raised any capital, hadn't started. This is 2 years ago. And she agreed to it. And, we said, we'll pay you. She doesn't need the money. She doesn't need any of the money, right? But she charged us and she explained, she said, the only reason I'm doing this, number one, you pay attention to what you pay for. So I needed to hurt a little bit, enough for y'all to show up and let me teach you the way and all the tricks of the trade and all that stuff. And she did. But I asked her early on, I said, Kelly, you're literally building a direct competitor to you. Like you're mentoring me to start a company that will eventually compete with you in the same markets and stuff like that, because she lives in North Carolina as well. And her response, this is why, going back to the abundance mindset, she said, there's enough sunshine for us all. And
that is so true.
Wow. Like that blew me away. It still gives me goosebumps to say it. And it kind of reshaped how I think about things. Like, no, collaboration is better than competition. And that's all she was doing. She's paying it forward, knowing that I'll do that to 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 people along the way, and they'll continue to do it. And you build this spider web, this compound effect of good-hearted people doing the same thing. And so when you're looking for a mentor, find somebody with that mentality. You might have to pay for them, so
invest in yourself. That's right. And so many people don't. If they would take that step and invest in themselves, it'll pay off for them.
Yep. It's hard to do, but it's one of those kind of painful things. You got to get over that hump. Then you'll realize it's the best decision and money you've ever spent. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, Lisa, I can't thank you enough. I really am very excited we were able to do this. I will definitely keep you posted on our Dealmaker event, so I can hopefully, if not before then, but hopefully meet you in person and have you out at that. I think that'd be fantastic. So
that sounds awesome. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining me. Have a good one.
You too.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Burning the Ships. I want to give a special thanks to our sponsor, 608B Capital, helping real estate investors secure fast, reliable funding to fuel their boldest moves. If you're ready to take your investing to the next level, visit 608bcapital.com to learn more. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps us reach more people who are ready to burn the ships and commit fully to their goals. And don't forget to share the episode with someone who needs that extra push to take bold action. I'll leave you with this. Burning the ships isn't just about removing the option to retreat. It's about unlocking the courage to charge forward. No matter the odds, the past is behind you and the future is yours to conquer. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time on Burning the Ships.